Hi guys, I'm Rochelle and I'm a Ravenclaw, and today I'm going to be bringing you part 2 of my May wrap-up. Yay! I'm going to assume that if you're watching this, you've already watched part 1 of my May wrap-up. If you haven't, I will leave a description to that down below. I am doing 3 wrap-ups in the month of May because I read way too many books. So this is the last 12 of the books that I read in the month of May that weren't pertaining to the hashtag comic book Sunday readathon that I participated in. I'll give you a quick roundup of that at the very end. I'll just list things that I read and the ratings that I gave it. I won't talk at all about what they're about or why I gave them the ratings. If you want that information, go to the hashtag comic book Sunday wrap up that I did. I'll also leave that linked in the description down below. We've got 12 things to talk about. Let's get on with it. So the first thing that I'm going to talk to you guys about in this part of my wrap up is Android Karenina by Leo Tolstoy and Ben H. Winters. I got this out on audiobook from my library. I read earlier this year Anna Karenina. I still am not sure how I feel about Anna Karenina, but I did want to finish this particular retelling before the end of the year, so I figured maybe if I get it in a slightly different context, in a slightly different way, that'll help clarify my feelings for Anna Karenina. Spoiler alert, it didn't. I ended up giving this 2 stars. I felt that the mashup, with the androids and the sci-fi elements, didn't quite work with the overarching story. This doesn't follow the plot of Anna Karenina particularly closely, the end parts, because of the android actions. It's very far removed from what actually happens in Anna Karenina. I was not a fan of the narrator for this. I wasn't a fan of the characterization of some of these people. There was a lot of information in here that was just assumed, and I would have liked more of an explanation of. They started talking about the different classes of android and kind of just assumed that you would roll with it without explaining what the difference between the classes is. It was just this is a class 1 robot, this is a class 2 android, this is a class 3. And this is their, adopted function. So not a huge fan of this. Didn't super enjoy it. I'm glad that I read it. But yeah, I would not recommend the audiobook for this. I wouldn't really hugely recommend the book itself. There is trigger warnings for undiagnosed pre- and postnatal depression. There's a bunch of other mental illnesses getting represented in this, and there is self-harming thoughts and suicidal thoughts and a suicide, etc. in the Anna Karenina story. One of my biggest issues with this book is one of the ways that a mental illness is resolved. I do not like using that term, but it's basically how it was treated. This person's mental illness was cured by accepting that God is real and God loves you, and not actually treating any of the symptoms. And prior to the mental illness, this person was very atheistic or agnostic, depending how you personally interpreted some of his thoughts. So wasn't a huge fan of this. Wasn't a huge fan of the elements of Anna Karenina that they chose to transport into this. Not a huge fan of this. The next thing that I read in the month of May is The Forest of Hands and Teeth by Carrie Ryan. This is a zombie apocalypse slightly dystopian story. For those of you that didn't watch my TBR for last month, you will be unaware that I am actually legitimately terrified of the idea of zombies. I have zombie nightmares once a week or fortnight. Thankfully, the zombies weren't like the main focus. They were just part of the world building in this. I gave this 3 stars. I did really enjoy the narration. It was really quick and short. I enjoyed some of the characters. I enjoyed the way that the world building was held. I'll probably pick up the next book if it's available on audio from my library. I just wanted stuff to be a little bit more fleshed out. The justifications for some of the decisions in this I felt were a little wishy-washy. Like, you'd have to read this to understand, but yeah, there was a character who kept going back to the same justification and motivation for every single decision that they made, and that was really frustrating when it wasn't like a motivation that I would consider like a huge deal. So we'll think about picking the next. The next thing that I read in the month of May is The Keeping Place by Isabel Carmody. I gave this one 3 stars. This one felt quite drawn out in places, and it's over 750 pages. I felt after I finished it like not a whole lot had happened to justify 754 pages. Like, while I was reading it, it didn't feel super long and it felt like we were going at a good pace, but when I closed this book I was like, okay, so this happened and this happened and this happened, and like went through the process of events, and I was just like, was that really necessary? For like, was 700 pages really necessary for all of this to happen? And yes, we got a lot of necessary character development, etc. But yeah, I just felt like this could be trimmed down a little bit. Maybe get to 600-ish pages. 500 would be lovely. This is book 4 in the Over Newton series. This follows Elspeth. Elspeth is someone who is part of a prophecy where the world that she lives in is the result of a nuclear war, and the prophecy pertains to her and another person. If she finds the remaining nuclear weapons, she will destroy them, thus saving the land forever. The other person finds them, they're gonna like launch them and destroy what remains of humanity. This is really hard to pin down genre-wise. It's got a little bit of everything, so if you're interested, I would definitely consider picking up the first book. The next thing that I read in the month of May is a bit controversial. It's Serafina by Rachel Hartman. I was initially very hesitant to read this book. Like, I liked the idea behind it, where in this world dragons can hide in human form and move throughout society. So I really liked the idea behind that, but I'd heard, like, in general, that this was really slow, not a lot happened, not many people enjoyed it, and I actually really enjoyed this. Maybe it's just because I was listening to the audiobook and not reading this, but I felt that this went at a pretty decent pace. There was a lot of stuff that happened. We met a lot of characters that I really enjoyed. I think one of the main complaints is the main character is like doesn't make realistic decisions, but I felt that her decisions and her attitude and everything were definitely informed by the life that she had led and the experiences that she had had. So yeah, I definitely want to pick up the second book in this duology. So yeah, I'm definitely hoping to get that one very soon. The next thing that I read in the month of May is Something Strange and Deadly by Susan Dennard. I gave this 3 stars. Again, this is another book where zombies are part of the world building but not the main focus. This story follows Eleanor. Her father has died and her brother has mysteriously gone missing. She hooks up with this group called the Spirit Hunters in hopes of finding her brother and rescuing him. I felt that I didn't enjoy this one as much as I would have, particularly because there was such like a focus on Eleanor's like love interest, and that's just, if I want a romance, you better label it as a romance or something that's very romance heavy, which this book is and isn't marketed as. You've got, again, another thing that I dislike, a trope, one of my least favourite tropes, a for no good reason love triangle. I didn't really like the characters in this. I don't like who I'm assuming that the main character is going to end up with. I think he's a bit of a dickhead, and I think that Eleanor is way too good for him. And one of the love interests in here does something that I dislike in general, and that is he uses Empress as a nickname, and I'm not a huge fan of people nicknaming other people like Princess or Empress or Queen or something that infers that that person is way better than they are. I just think that's very unrealistic for a relationship to maintain. So I gave this 3 stars. I still want to read Susan Donat's other book, Truth Witch, but I'm not sure whether I will continue this series. I'm leaning a lot more towards don't continue rather than do to continue. If you've read this and you think that the second book is a lot better and fixes a lot of the issues that I have with this story, please let me know. The next 2 things that I read in the month of May is Uglies and Pretties by Scott Westerfeld. This is books 1 and 2 to the Uglies trilogy or quartet, depending on how you want to look at this. This follows Tally Youngblood, who lives in a dystopian society where appearance is everything. On your 16th birthday, you are given a ridiculous amount of plastic surgery so that you all look relatively similar and everyone is pretty. I had previously read Uglies when I was, I think I would have been like 13 when I originally picked this up. It would have been just published, like Pretties wasn't out yet. And I had always meant to go back and read the rest of the series because I initially really enjoyed this one, but upon the reread I didn't enjoy it quite as much. It was very simplistic this time around. Like, I felt that there were a lot of very complex issues that were dealt with very easily and very quickly. There was no discussion about some of the consequences of these. I did enjoy them. I gave them both 3 stars. Again, I listened to these on audiobook that I got from my library. Yeah, I do plan on finishing the series, and I do think that the covers are aesthetically very pleasing, and I do think the overall message of these books, being comfortable in your own skin and accepting yourself for who you are, is very important. I just think that maybe I'm a little too old for this series. The next thing that I read in the month of May is The Bourbon Kings by J.R. Ward. This is the first in a trilogy or series. I'm not quite sure how many books this is going to get. I've read all of J.R. Ward's other works at this point, and this is a deviation from her usual genre. This is like a Southern family saga romance where she's got a lot of like paranormal, urban fantasy, other stuff. None of that is in here except for like the romance aspects. This follows the Bradford family. They are like hugely important in their community. They're one of the largest and best whiskey producers in this realm, and it's about how they cope with their money and their family issues dealing with people that are hangers-on because of their wealth, etc., and how difficult it is for them to find people that want to be with them for themselves. I gave this 4 stars. I definitely want to pick up the rest in this series. Like, this normally isn't my kind of thing, but I did really enjoy all the characters in this. I felt connections with almost everyone. Yeah, we'll definitely be picking this up. The next thing that I read in the month of May is The Darkest Torment by Jinni. This is the next book in the same series that I was talking about in my wrap-up part 1. This follows the man who used to house the demon of distrust. He's had that removed, and now he is housing another entity of which we are not entirely sure what it is. This is the author's take on a Beauty and the Beast retelling. I didn't really get that vibe off it. Again, I felt that about 3/4 of the way through we were just repeating the same drama over and over and over again, like the characters weren't learning from their previous mistakes or issues or arguments that they'd had with each other. I did really like the female in this. I thought she was really relatable. She's a dog trainer and thus a huge animal lover, and I also love animals and I have 2 dogs, so I felt very connected to her, and I definitely understood why she was feeling the way that she was feeling. Yeah, I gave this 3 stars. I didn't enjoy it as much as previous installments, but you know, there's got to be a dud every now and then. The next thing that I read in the month of May is The Dream Thieves by Maggie Stiefvater. I gave this 4 stars. This is the second book in the Raven Boys cycle. This follows Blue, who is a psychic, and she joins up with a group of 4 guys as they look for this ancient tomb for this Welsh king that's meant to have like sweet supernatural powers, and is meant to grant a wish to whoever finds him. I'm really enjoying this. I felt a lot more connection to the characters in this one just because of like some things that were revealed about them. Yeah, I'm definitely going to continue on to the next book very soon. I enjoy the world building in this. I think the writing, while a little strange, is still, like, a strange just doesn't take away from your ability to actually read this. So yeah, really enjoyed this. Will continue. The next thing that I read in the month of May was The Golem and the Jinni by Helen Wecker. This one was a real surprise for me. I ended up giving this 4 stars. I went into it not really knowing a lot, and I think that's the way that you should go into this. This follows Sheva, who is a golem, which is a Jewish being who is animated in clay, and they serve their master. And it also follows Ahmed, who is a jinn who has been trapped in a copper flask for 800 years. And they randomly meet, and it's a very unlikely friendship, and yeah, I really enjoyed the elements to this. There is some magical realism. This discusses religion without appearing disrespectful of it, like, because there's several different people of religious ethnicities in here, and we get a look about why they make their religious decisions as they do. Yeah, I would highly recommend this to anyone that is interested. The last thing that I read that was not a part of a readathon is The Shadowed Throne by KJ Taylor. I read The Shadows Heir last year. I gave it 5 stars. I really enjoyed it. I started this one I ended up giving it 3 stars. The things that I had found charming in the character in the first book kind of became irritating in this book. I am still really enjoying the world and the plot building and a lot of the characterization. The overall message I'm not a huge fan of, but it is a pretty decent fantasy series, and it does include a magical creature that I feel doesn't get enough love, which is griffins. Would definitely recommend you look into the first book if you're interested. In case you don't want to go and watch what I assume is a 20-minute video for my comic book Sunday wrap-up, I'm going to quickly list the things that I read and the ratings that I gave them. I'm not going to talk about them in depth at all. It'll just be the name and the rating. So the first thing that I read for Comic Book Sunday was The Fade Out Volume 1 by Ed Brucker. I gave it 2 stars. The next thing I read was The Fix Volume 1 by Nick Spencer. I gave it 3 stars. The next thing was Shutter Issue 1 by Joe Keating. I gave that 4 stars. The one after that was Horizon Issue 1 by Brandon Thomas. I gave it 2 stars. Next was I Hate Fairyland Volume 1 by Scotty Young. I gave that 3 stars. And then there was Injection Volume 1 by Warren Ellis. I gave that 3 stars. Then I read Island Issue 1 by Brandon Graham. I gave that 1 star. Then I read Kaptara Volume 1 by Chip Zdarsky. I gave that 2 stars. Then it was Kill or Be Killed Issue 1 by Ed Brubaker, who I gave 2 stars. Then Lazarus Volume 1 by Greg Rucka, who I gave 4 stars. Limbo Volume 1 by Dan Waters, which I gave 2 stars. Then Mirror Volume 1, The Mountain by Emma Rios, which I gave 3 stars. Then Moonshine No. 1 by Brian Azzarello, which I gave 2 stars. Then Morning Glories Volume 1 by Nick Spencer, which I gave 4 stars. After that was Nailbiter Volume 1 by Joshua Williamson, which I gave 3 stars. Then I read Nowhere Men Volume 1 by Eric Stevenson, which I gave 4 stars. Then Odyssey Volume 1 by Matt Fraction, which I gave 1 star. And finally Outcast Volume 1 by Robert Kirkman, which I also gave 1 star. So in total for the month of May, I read 10,222 pages. I crushed it this month. If you have read any of the things that I mentioned in any of my wrap-ups, please feel free to leave a comment down below if you enjoyed them. If you didn't enjoy them, I would love to hear your thoughts and opinions on everything that I've talked about today. You should be seeing my May book haul very shortly, and that's everything from me today. I hope you have a magical day. Bye!